one, there's no regrets. There's nothing that I've run into that is not the game I chose to play, right? I look at this as, I love board games, I love video games. I'm playing one in real life. Like, it's strategy, it's taking in information, it's, and sometimes you lose a little bit and it's okay, and you just, push reset and get back in. That's the nice part, that I have that luxury within the industry myself.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast, where we talk about all things drones and how they're being used in the Caribbean. Now, my guest today is a highly influential and visible figure in the commercial UAV industry. He is particularly known for his roles in leading major drone and related technology companies, a short list of which include he was instrumental in building and launching DJI's Enterprise division. He also served as the global head of industrial SUAS at FLIR and was also briefly the CEO of Autel Robotics North America. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Randall Warness, the CEO of Anzu Robotics. Hi, Randall. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. Randall, for the audience that may not be familiar with you, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself for them?
Yeah, so my name's Randall Warness. Currently, I am the CEO of Anzu Robotics. But before we get into what Anzu Robotics is, I think it's important to kind of discuss a little bit about the journey getting to this place in October of 2025. So in 2014, in June of 2014, myself and two business partners started the first brick and mortar drone store in the world. This was in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we were one of DJI's first resellers in the United States. We expanded to 15 locations around North America. We had 2 in Canada, and it spanned from Honolulu, Hawaii, all the way to Miami and Orlando in Florida, basically doing a land grab. And so early on, I had around 60 or 70 employees face to face with people buying drones in 2014, early days. And so I collated all of this information of what people were wanting to see and wanting to do with drone technology back then. And then in October of 2015, DJI approached me to join DJI initially to set up a chain of retail stores for DJI. When I arrived in Shenzhen in November of 2015, they were like, "Oh, we're not sure about starting this chain of stores, but we do have this product we're about to launch with FLIR. We don't really know, exactly what that's going to look like." So I was charged with founding DJI Enterprise and created kind of the pathway for that technology to be brought into the world, kind of moving from prosumer consumer technology into the workspace. So I was at DJI for a while and then went to FLIR for 5 years, ran their global commercial drone stuff with the largest thermal imaging manufacturer in the world. After that, I was the CEO of Autel Robotics for a very brief period of time, which is a story all in itself, but had the privilege to take on an executive role with the second largest drone manufacturer in the world. So, after that, I went to a couple different other manufacturers trying to help them navigate the mostly like international, how an international company can bring their technology into the United States. And then in April of 2024, founded and launched Anzu Robotics. Now, I would say that I have been in a lot of privileged places. I've seen a lot of things where, not everyone gets to have that kind of exposure. I've worked with countless Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies on their drone programs, public safety agencies. I've worked with pretty much every drone manufacturer that is doing something significant. Well, as FLIR was providing them thermal imaging sensors. So I don't know, man. When it comes to me, I feel like I'm one of I'm part of the industry. Being a CEO of a company, there's a lot of them that don't come from this industry, have not, worked for any company other than their own. Where I literally, my career was born in this industry. It is, in my blood, so to speak. And so I enjoy conversations like these, and you and I, we don't have a deep relationship or anything like that yet, but it's great to get to know, other people's perspectives and see what's going on in places of the world that I haven't spent a lot of time. Uh, and that allows me to kind of put it in my backpack and carry it into all the other conversations that I'm having regarding the drone industry.
Yeah. So I want to start honestly at the beginning, because it's not every day you get to meet somebody who essentially led the formation of DJI's enterprise program.
Sure. Yep.
So you said how you ended up there, but what is it going into retail store owner background initially to, okay, this is how we get the enterprise aspect of this off the ground going and to where it is now, where
Yeah.
it is taken over, has taken over.
Yeah. So I my objectives in life were never like leading me down a pathway to being part of this industry. I'm not an engineer. I was doing intelligence work for the US government before the drone industry really hit me. And so showing up to the mothership that is DJI
Yeah.
in November of 2015, um, I had confidence that I was capable of doing things, but I really didn't have uh, a clear plan.
Right.
Winging it was a significant part of it. I had expressed to folks what I would do if that were my responsibility, and then it got dropped in my lap. But one of the key things about DJI and creating DJI Enterprise is its purpose initially was really to determine who was buying DJI products. Now, you could find market research reports all over the place that will say, here's the total addressable market, here's the percent that DJI sells versus other manufacturers, and a lot of estimations on like how many drones are being used for public safety or agriculture or construction, etc. If you don't have DJI's data, how could you have good data? Because DJI is effectively 80, 85, 90% of the entire commercial drone
Yeah.
market. So the problem DJI had is that they made a product, let's say it's the Phantom 3 at the time. If someone goes to Drone Nerds or if they go to Best Buy and they buy a Phantom 3, or in 2015, were they using it for firefighting? Were they using it for wedding photography? Were they using it for personal, making some cool videos, of them skiing or something like that? There was no way for DJI to determine that.
Okay.
So what they did is they forked the reseller network. And it was my objective to sign up entirely new resellers that had an industrial focus. So instead of going to a company like Drones Plus that I started, which was meant for the commercial market or the consumer market, we would sign companies like Firecam that sold body cams to fire departments, or Benchmark Supply that sold construction materials to surveyors and engineers, so that where the drone was bought would tell them how big the industrial market was.
Okay.
That was the only way that at the time they could determine how they knew the same product, Phantom 3, was being used for an industrial purpose or a consumer purpose. As they have created new product lines, obviously there's a distinction
Yeah.
there. And that's why you find consumer products not having things like SDKs, so that you can't use DroneSense, a public safety software, on a
Mavic
Mavic
3. Yeah.
3 non enterprise, because they need the people that are using it for industrial to stay on the industrial product so that they can measure how big that market is, so they know where to put their investments and what technologies are needed. DJI has done the best job at making a one size fits all type technology where you could take a consumer drone and use it for surveying, and it's pretty much as quality as like the next manufacturer's intended surveying drone.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where there's been a lot of complaints from users of DJI technologies. They're like, unleash me, let me use it for what I want to use it for. But there's this obsession with data and understanding the customer that has led them to really drive home these are enterprise products and these are not enterprise
Yeah,
products.
I'd be one of those customers because my Phantom 4 could do everything. My Mavic 2 could do everything, and then moving on from there, it's like, okay, well, you can't do this, you can't install this, you can't use it for this. Eh.
Yeah.
Yes, why is DJI doing this to us? So
Yeah.
what products would you all have released while you were at DJI?
So at the time, it was ZenMuse XT, Matrice 200, Matrice 300 came no, sorry. Yeah, M100 and Matrice 200 came out just as I was leaving.
Okay.
That was my like I was the one doing kind of the market research and providing information back to engineering on the Matrice 200, but I left like basically the same month that that product was
Okay. You
launched.
know, we actually still, so I work for a drone service provider here in Trinidad and Tobago. We actually still have a 100 and it works.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
we use it on
Yeah.
a tethered system. But yeah, we still have one. It works. The batteries still work, everything.
It's crazy to see how far we've come because that was supposed to be like the developer platform. You could get the manifold
Hmm.
and do all the, extra stuff to it. Now, basically, you could take any drone off the
Yeah.
shelf, and it has a PSDK, MSDK. You could do all sorts of things on an airframe that's much more sophisticated. So, yeah, I mean, like in the 10, 11 years that I've been really working closely with DJI, it's insane how far the technology's come
Oh
and,
yeah.
and how they've led it. There's really good technology manufacturers around the world, but I think that we're all a little bit, I don't know, forced to play this political game of not giving DJI its flowers when really this whole industry exists because of the ideation of specifically one master's or PhD student in a Hong Kong
Yeah.
university, and it's changed the world. And I think that when we start seeing the conflict within the drone industry, it's long forgotten that DJI has invested a ton to make a lot of this stuff reality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. You know, you hear all the bickering about, Chinese technology just kind of excluding the
Yep.
company itself and the significant impact that they've made. But it is what it is. So you left DJI. How did you make the move? Well, what was behind the decision to make the move from DJI now to FLIR?
So I mean, working for a Chinese company is not. eh, It's not always fun. It's not always easy, especially just like I was living in Los Angeles. I didn't want to be there in the first place, and I would start my day driving for 2 hours into the office through traffic. I would leave the office and drive 2 hours back, and
Is
then China would be waking up, and I would have meetings for, a couple hours before going to bed, and that wasn't the balance I would hope to have
Yeah.
long term. I think that there was also an opportunity where FLIR reached out to me and said, "Hey, we want you to come and run our stuff globally." And it was a lifestyle change as well as just a positional change.
Okay.
Working for a U.S. company that wanted me to be there and gave me stock options and gave me a global responsibility to where I was traveling all over the world for 5 years, evangelizing about drone technology. It was all it was all interesting. So I moved back to Salt Lake City back in 2017 when I joined FLIR, and I think that was also really important for me as a life step. Uh, and I was still working with DJI on a regular basis
Yeah.
because we had the ZenMuse XT and then the ZenMuse
Actually, too.
XT2
Right.
as a joint product together. So I didn't actually, never lost touch with DJI even when I was not their employee anymore.
Okay. What happened with the relationship between FLIR and DJI? Was it strictly US China relations, or was there something else that led DJI to start developing their own thermal tech?
Well, that was always if you want to be a pessimist, you could look at it as FLIR and DJI make two thermal imaging products together, and then DJI eventually learns how to do a lot of that stuff on their own and goes and finds another wafer manufacturer in China and does it like creates their own
All
products.
right.
The reality is that FLIR technology is very expensive in comparison to other thermal imaging manufacturers. They are the best. They do the largest volume. They're the most sophisticated when it comes to higher end thermal imagers. But for them to be able to go to a thermal uh, fabricator in China, bring that price down, and not have the restrictions on 30 hertz and 9 hertz,
Yeah.
which uh, the US could only send 9 hertz versions to China, and so they were having an inferior product to be used for the Chinese market. It makes sense why they went on their own, but really there was something happening within FLIR at the time where the CEO was a 20-year ex army guy, and there was pressures to work less with China, especially if you're uh, developing products for the U.S. military. Being seen having close relations with China was not necessarily helping the salespeople on the defense side of FLIR, and so uh, Anzu Robotics being my company now is really the initial thoughts of that came from when I was at FLIR. There was a period of time, probably 18 months, in which DJI and FLIR were talking about a joint venture to create manufacture DJI drones in the United States under the FLIR brand.
Okay.
And that was pretty far along. I
Mm,
was going to China regularly, and then we'd have occasionally they would come from China to the US, but that would have been a game-changing relationship. We're talking, hundreds of millions of dollars. We're talking about the lack of all the geopolitical stuff happening in the US today
right.
related to DJI and Chinese manufactured drones. So what I've done at Anzu is effectively, taken that concept and did it under my own brand 6 years later.
I never really understood the 9 hertz, 30 hertz thing. Like, what was the need for the restriction? Because, and I don't even know if it exists now, because you could export H20T, H30T from the US, no
Yeah.
licenses needed. What exactly was that a need for
Yeah.
that restriction about?
So a 30 hertz thermal imaging camera is considered weapons grade. So let's imagine you have a heat-seeking missile.
Right.
30 hertz allows that missile to basically track the target. Where 9 hertz, there's these
The delay.
stutters in the feed, so it they don't consider that reliable enough to use for weapons. So the concern would be you sell a 30 hertz ZeniMuse XT, someone just takes the core out and puts it into a military purpose, right?
Okay.
Like something they can't access, technology they can't access. Now they could access it through a thermal imaging drone product. The reason that you could take an H20T is that it's not a US developed technology. So there's no export restriction on it that could be imposed by the US because it's not US technology.
So does that restriction still exist? The 30 hertz from
The
FLIR?
restriction for FLIR selling 30 hertz cameras to certain countries, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Was not aware of that. I just knew it. I knew it was a thing. I just never really understood the reason why, because you could get them from other markets as well at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, when FLIR was the only player in the game, it was, or the biggest, the most obvious player in the
Yeah.
game. They probably wanted to protect that IP and make sure that that technology was not shared. But I think that it's also just part of like U.S. export control stuff, where when you have an ITAR product, which a 30 hertz camera can be listed ITAR for or dual use, it's it becomes problematic for
Okay.
export.
So now we move from FLIR
Yes,
to Autel. So basically,
Autel. Yeah,
you help build the enterprise division of DJI. You furthered it with FLIR, and now you've joined DJI's. Well, I mean, technically they were the biggest competition. I don't know how close it was in terms of sales and stuff, but
yeah,
you joined the competition. Why?
yeah. So when I knew I was leaving FLIR, FLIR got acquired by Teledyne,
Right.
and talking about what the plans were, there weren't really ones that I believed in as far as where we were going to put investment and how FLIR was going to play in the commercial drone space. They made an acquisition of a company called Altavian that I absolutely disagreed with. They shut that business down within, I think, like 6 months of the acquisition.
Right.
Uh, when we could have acquired a company like Teal, where now Teal under Red Cat is doing extremely well. There were things that I was, frustrated by, and
Yeah.
I felt like being the guy that ran that business that they should listen to me more. That's just me being kind of transparent about why I would not have just stayed. And so always had people float around like, well, if you ever left FLIR, let me know. We'll have these conversations and see how you'd fit. And I was pretty insecure about the move and I wanted to land at the right place. So I talked to a bunch of people, and I will tell anyone, like, don't do that, because what I did is I had 7 offers on my table, choosing which one I could only pick one, I could
Okay.
only work for one, which means I had to say 6 no's, and that was not the best position to put myself in, because those are bridges that maybe aren't entirely burned. I think people understand the need for someone to look out for themselves, but I think it also made it so that those doors are harder to open later on. Anyway, sitting with these opportunities in front of me, last minute, someone from Autel reaches out and they said, "Hey, we have our some guy that's going to be in Utah. Would you be interested in meeting with him?" I said, "Sure." So I go to a flight demo thing, and then after, have lunch with Max, who Max is the son of the billionaire founder of
Yeah.
Autel, and he's like, "We like, how would you feel about being the CEO?" And it never crossed my mind. I was at that point in my journey in my life, right? And taking the second largest drone manufacturer and giving me the ability to do what I do with that technology, I was like, how could I say
Yeah.
no? And he said that his dad, Frank, his desire was to build out a strong sales and marketing team, and I'm like, incredible. So I went and talked to some of my favorite people in the industry and was like, "You want to come and do this with me?" And so in from June 1st to July 5th, I hired 9 of the best people in the drone industry,
Right.
including Kyle Miller, who
Yeah.
we were talking about before. Uh, we had the dream team. We had John McBride, we had Troy Hiddle, we had Rich Schutte, who was a FLIR guy, knew thermal really well. We had Bobby Sakaki,
Mm-hmm.
who obviously has had a huge rise in his
Yeah.
uh, visibility over the years. Like, we had everything you would need to build the best drone company possible with good technology. And it was 9 weeks later that I resigned. So it was a really heartbreaking experience, really hard on me mentally, because I shot my shot. I turned a bunch of companies down to go and take this opportunity, and what experienced was that even when the Chinese business culture attempts to let you run, it isn't necessarily in the way that is necessary for someone to feel independent, for someone to feel like they're making their own decisions. So, I don't know how much you wanna get into the actual story, the reason that I left.
Hey, I'm here for
I've
it.
talked about it. Okay. So there was the former CEO of Autel, Gary DeLuca, or yeah, Gary DeLuca, and he was not really participating in like any of the stuff that we were doing. I would invite him to things, but he would never show up as like a strategic board advisory guy. And then there's another guy in the industry that he and I have had our roads cross a few times, and he's always been kind of a thorn in my ass. And this guy went to Gary and complained about some stuff with my team. So Gary started calling my team, and Gary called Troy Hiddle, who was the VP of sales at Ag Eagle before, and was the GM of SenseFly before that. So seasoned guy, been around the block, been around for a long time. Gary calls him 5 weeks after he took the job and said, "Hey, I need to know if you have flown your demo drone." And he said, "No, I haven't. Like, I've been doing other stuff." And he said, "Do you even know what are the 2 ways to land an Evo 2?" And he said, "No, it's not really like my thing." He was a sales guy. He
Mhm.
doesn't need to be flying drones around. And because of that, he reaches out to Frank, the owner, and says, "These guys are fucking around," and like, pardon my
Yeah, it's
swearing.
fine.
Anyway, uh, and like, we gotta get rid of them. So Gary calls me on like a Friday and he's like, "Hey, you gotta fire Troy." I'm like, "I'm not gonna fire Troy." Like, no. And he's like, "Well, you got to." I said, "I'm not going to." Uh, so then I said, "I'll talk to Frank." So I talked to Frank on the following Tuesday, and he's like, "What has he done? What good has he done in his 5 weeks there?" I'm like, 5 weeks?
Yeah.
5 weeks is 5 weeks. But I gave him a list of 9 things that I was like, "Yeah, I'm satisfied with this, with his work." And he's like, "Well, You gotta do it. I said, no. He's like, well, if you don't, like, it was something like, well, if you don't do it, then you're gone too. And I said, fine, see ya. Like, no problem. Because my thinking at the time was, if I can't stand up for one employee, I can't stand up for
Any
any
of
of
them.
them.
Yeah.
If I'm called the CEO of a company, I have to be in control of those things. That's like bare minimum. I need to be able to determine the successes of my team and move them accordingly. 5 weeks is not a good assessment of that time. There was no wrongdoing that I was aware of.
Mhm.
And so I, out of principle, walked away. And it was walking away from an opportunity that I didn't know I'd ever get again. It walked away from stability in my life. It walked away from the disappoint or walked into the disappointment of the 8 other people that were left behind that no longer had me as the leader and no longer knew what the hell was going
Yeah.
on. It was really tough. And I can't say that I haven't learned a lot of lessons from that experience. I am grateful for that experience as a life lesson. And I think that all the people that I brought, they've all left. They all left shortly after, but they all ended up in places that were better. And I think that for the most part, and I think that that's a great thing. But yeah, the Autel experience, 9 weeks of being with a company, it still follows me today, and that was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, it could have worked. It could have been. I say this to Autel people. I say this to the people that were with me. I was like, we had everything. We had the best, like second best technology, as close to DJI as you could get, and a team that actually gave a shit. We could have moved that thing like taken market share in a significant way. Um, but we'll never really
Because
know.
that was actually going to be my question. They say hindsight is always 2020, but if that hadn't gone down, do you think you would have been able to take or get to the place of actual real competition with DJI?
Uh, I mean, like not parity. DJI is special. The way that their technology is special, the way they innovate is special, but it also requires some sort of like some cutthroatness stuff that happens that
Yeah.
is like, that's their business. But how they get there is because people work long, hard hours and have high expectations, and it's a revolving door, and all of those things create challenges within DJI's, own business structure. Is that there's different people all the time, and so there's not a lot of consistency.
Okay. Yeah.
However, could Autel do the same? Autel had the backing of a billionaire founder, but I don't think that even billions can really get like you can't force the technology to get there just because you have billions of
Yeah.
dollars. What I think we could have done is clearly been the best alternative to DJI in a time frame when there was not a lot of like threat to DJI as far as the ability to purchase it because of geopolitics. And so as the political wave came crashing on DJI, I think Autel would have likely been left alone, even though it's a Chinese manufacturer. I
Right.
think that there would have been enough US facing representation, willingness to be transparent, willingness to engage with the US government to figure out best pathways forward that Autel would not likely have been included in a lot of the legislation that has happened. So as we look into 2026 with the US FCC restriction,
Hmm.
people call it ban, but FCC restriction on DJI and Autel drones, that could have opened up a huge opportunity for a company like Autel if it were still able to not be included in that similar legislation
Yeah.
because uh, DJI is losing market share at a rapid rate in the United States and in other countries because of uh, I think mostly their lack of willingness to engage with the U.S. government personally, and I mean Frank being the CEO should have a long time ago engaged and said, "Look, this is what we're doing. This is what we're not doing." But he always made it the problem of policy people,
Right.
and that makes it show a lack of transparency. And that is a Chinese business culture thing. From what I understand, is when you're accused of something, you don't give it any attention because that's how it goes away. If you give it any attention, it's more likely to exacerbate and become a bigger deal. And so true to Chinese business culture, Chinese form, they ignored these accusations of forced labor, and they ignored accusations of stealing data. They're just like, no, we'll just let them talk. And what ended up resulting from that is that there's just trust was
Yeah.
deteriorated significantly.
Okay. Before we continue, special announcement. We have just launched the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast drone pilot checklist. So, whether you are a hobbyist or a commercial operator, this checklist will make sure that you have everything in order before you take off for your next flight. Now, to get the checklist, there's a link in the description, and you sign up and you will receive it in your email. Now, we are also announcing that we'll be launching the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast newsletter in a couple of weeks. So that's coming soon. And once you sign up to receive the checklist, you'll automatically be added to the newsletter listing. Or if you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can head over to the website, pilotsofthecaribbeanpod.com. And there's a form on the homepage where you could submit your name and your email address, and you'll be added to the newsletter list. And I guarantee you're not going to want to miss out on that, because we have some really good stuff coming at you. So, checklist, link in the description. If you just want to sign up for the newsletter, head over to the website and sign up now. Now back to it. So before we get into just to touch back on this, the reason why you left, and
Yeah,
talking to and following some of the persons that you mentioned that would have worked for you. When you look at some of the like histories and having had conversations with them, it makes sense. Well, as a reason why it possibly happened without coming out and saying it publicly in this forum, it made sense why what happened in terms of that person causing the issues that they did. But that's a conversation we could have, offline.
sure.
So today we come to Anzu. Well, there's a couple steps in between that, but now we're at Anzu. And one of the biggest questions is, okay, no, before we get to that point, what is Anzu Robotics? But
Yeah. So Anzu Robotics is a drone manufacturer, and basically we license DJI technology. Currently, the Mavic 3 Enterprise and Mavic 3 Thermal. We manufacture those drones in Malaysia, and then we put U.S. software on it to make sure that the data is secure. It goes to U.S. servers that are not owned or accessible by anyone in China or DJI specifically. So basically, the idea is that we scrub the Chineseness that U.S. government and other governments
right,
and other organizations are fearing,
right,
and saying, "Look, we still are taking the design, we're taking the flight dynamics, and the hundreds of millions of dollars of R&D that have gone into building this technology. We're still benefiting from that, but we're manufacturing it in our own kitchen. So you're not having any it's not directly it's not made in China. It's not made by DJI, and then transactionally, all the stuff is happening with an organization that's based in the United States,
okay,
owned entirely by American citizens. And then the data, obviously that was for a very long time. It was all about data security. I think most of us in the drone industry know that it was never really about a firefighters'
yeah,
data getting stolen. That was the concern. Uh, Now it's come out more. Oh, it's about supply chain, which I do believe is the problem. Is that if you have all the drones that are in the world manufactured in China, and you no longer have a relationship with China in when it comes to trade, how are you going to get drones? And we've seen how important drone technology is in not only the commercial space but also in warfare, where we're seeing that in the
oh yeah.
Ukrainian Russian conflict.
So why the decision to license as opposed to build your own?
Building drones is very hard. Very, very
Yeah,
hard. I mean, we've seen, 3DR. Chris Anderson was as close to anyone to ever get to DJI quality technology simultaneously, like at the same time. The Solo and the Phantom stuff were not far off as far as their capabilities, and he's infamous in his. I think it was Forbes did a huge thing on him where he's just like, yeah, you can't compete against DJI. It's impossible. To go out and develop a technology that parodies what DJI can do. We see that with companies like Autel, where it's basically like it's not it for a very long time. It wasn't forward thinking. It was just basically like one step behind DJI as DJI progressed. That is possible, but when you don't have the access to less expensive Chinese engineers at a very, high rate, and you don't have that background,
Yeah.
it's really, really hard. And so we see other manufacturers, Parrot, Teal, Skydio, Vantage, like they all make a product that does something, but none of it is truly as good as DJI, in my opinion.
So do you see yourself as yeah, do you see yourself as competing with DJI or just, fill in a potential void that may happen in the US market?
I don't think anyone that can buy DJI would buy an Anzu drone. If your organization says, "Buy DJI, buy Chinese drones, we don't care," you would never pay a 30-40% premium to buy a green version
Right.
that is, not as open with our SDK, etcetera. So, it's not competing. It is totally filling a void for those that are on a decision matrix where they just say, "Can I buy a Chinese manufactured drone?" If no,
Yeah.
I should be the logical next place
Yeah.
because it is the best drone technology in the world without the distinction or the stigma of being manufactured in China and owned by someone that's based in the US that's sitting on a podcast with you that you could ask questions to and you could kind of hear the story. I'm not stealing anyone's data. I think people could probably feel pretty comfortable with that. So, you know, there's there's no longer the problem.
Yeah.
Then it go the only the where it becomes a problem is I'm not blue UAS, I'm not green UAS, I'm not NDAA certified. So when the organizations get to a level that I can't participate, then you're looking at Skydio, Parrot, Vantage, etc. But for those that are just wanting a commercial alternative to DJI, why not? Why retrain your entire team on using a new technology when you could use the same familiarity of the technology, but have you know rid yourselves of those geopolitical
Yeah.
concerns.
Silly question. Why green?
Yeah, I've been asked that question probably a few thousand times, so I can answer it. Uh, so why the color green? Green is just a color, right?
Right.
It's more appealing than bright yellow. It's more appealing than bright orange, and it's not as difficult as black because black drones get super hot,
Yeah.
for instance, right? So when you want to differentiate a DJI drone from your drone, even though they look the same, you're going to make it a different color. That's an obvious choice. Uh, so at the time, from the time we started negotiating this project to the time that we launched was about a year. It might even been closer to 9 months that it got serious. And so when it's decisions that you're making, how you're sourcing more components in Malaysia than in China, how you're naming, creating a brand, figuring out the commercial terms between companies, at some point we got to plastics. And when you're taking materials into Malaysia, you have to figure out who can make this exact same material that's being used on the DJI drone in Malaysia. And there's only so many factories that could create
Right.
uh, chemistry of that plastic. So when we found them, they would send us like a PDF of color options. And so myself and two of my business partners are sitting on a meeting similar to this, and we're like, "All right, let's pull up the colors."
Right.
And if I pull it up on one monitor and they're pulling it up on one laptop and another monitor, those colors
Look
look very
different.
different.
Hmm.
Uh, so as we're looking at it on a computer screen, we're like, "The green looks great." It looked kind of like a mossy, kind of
Yeah.
military, much sexier green than what it showed up. So when the first samples showed up, we're like, "What in the hell is
Right.
this?" It was like this army man green that it was definitely not what was intended. And the options were send everything back, go back to manufacturing, delay everything by months, or
Continue with the
just be
green.
like, "All right, weird green it is," and we'll have a podcaster a year and a half later being like, "Why did you choose this ugly ass color?" And we went with that.
Yeah, because marketing people in marketing always have these, blue invokes this reason and all these other different scientific explanations. Okay,
Yeah.
it's getting on to well, it looked a lot better when we chose it.
Exactly. But I mean, we've sold a lot of drones,
Yeah,
and I understand that there's people that wish that it were a different color, but I think some people have learned to really like it. Some people enjoy the fact that it's like so distinct, it stands
yeah.
out. But yeah, I mean, it was not the intended hue, for sure.
The models that you guys currently have are licensed after the Mavic 3 Enterprise series. Any plans for newer models?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of plans, but there's also one of the things about being the CEO of Anzu is that I had the easy button to making drone to manufacturing drones, but I did not have the easy button in navigating the politics that are going to follow it.
Yeah.
Um, since launching the company, I mean, like in the first 5 weeks, I had Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington
Yeah,
Post
you were
reach
all over
out.
the
You
place.
know, there were articles with people like current Secretary of State of the U.S. Marco Rubio being like, "We're going to shut down all these pretenders," and it's like that's not what I'm doing at all. And then I got a letter from the House Committee on China in August, went to DC and spoke before the House Committee in September, which was a great opportunity for me to show transparently like what we were doing and that we weren't bad guys and that it wasn't just that how or funded and owned by
Right.
DJI or the Chinese someone in China. So I'm grateful for some of these turmoil things, but at the same time, like I wake up every day with the purpose of trying to make some money to keep my kids fed and happy and, sustain a life.
Yeah.
It's not more than that. It's not more complicated than that. But when your days sometimes include political waves that you can't control,
Yeah.
accusations or ties to things that you can't control, it's a little bit it's frustrating for sure. And so like I said, I had an easy button. I can't complain. Like this has been the opportunity of a lifetime. This has been awesome. And where I'm at today is beyond anything that we even expected when we launched this thing. But when you say do we have more models, it's like I would have put out probably a dozen, well, half a dozen at least new models in 2025 if I wasn't bracing for what does 2026 look like under the new legislation in the US. And I hate the fact that you're in Trinidad. I hate that I talk about the US so much, but that's obviously where I'm at, and
Hmm.
it is still an somewhat important place when it comes to the global scheme of things. We do have customers in different parts of the world, and we have like they are not as hell bent on seeing the demise of DJI or drones
Yeah.
manufactured in China. But I still serve as a solution for those folks even as much as the US government will make moves to try to make sure that everything that's flown in the US is homegrown or at least close to homegrown. And I think it's a mistake. I will say that, publicly that I think that the approach to shut out global supply chain of drone technology is not only ill-advised, it might be stupid, because that's just where, the best technology is. It's where it makes it affordable. I have a good friend, Dr. Ian Kerr, who is the head of Ocean Alliance, and he kind of was the first person that I heard him say, uh, "Drones democratize the sky." And if you think about somebody needing to get a pilot license and needing access to a plane, a
Yep.
manned, aircraft, like, that makes it's a very high threshold for people that could get to that point where when you have drone technology and you could buy something now for under $1,000 and really do about anything that you want, it allowed for universities, K through 12 schools, people to just mess around and have like chase their ideas of what you could do with this 3D positional
Yeah.
camera for data collection. And if the United States is so proud that they're like, we don't want any of that Chinese stuff in here, we are going to lose the interest of young people because they're not going to see a drone. They're not going to be able to fly a $30,000 drone in their schools. That just is not realistic. And so I think that I am a big evangelist for free market and globalization of things. And when it comes to drone technology, it's not it's not easy when the uncertainty is just how well politicians are getting along,
Yeah.
where we just want to start solving problems, create efficiencies, and protect communities.
Well, you said you hate talking about, the US politics side of it, but it affects us here as well because I think without, having any sort of empirical data on this, I would say 90-95% of all drones in the region are DJI. So, and I
Yeah.
would then go on to say, the majority of them would be sourced from the States. So
Mhm.
if you can't access them in the States, which we have an issue doing right now, we now have to look at the alternatives, which may be a lot more expensive, whether you look at the UK or Canada or Central America, that kind of stuff, which may be more expensive and make access a lot more difficult. So,
Yeah,
the
and
same conversation we
when
have
you're
to have.
saying more expensive when you're saying more expensive, it's probably like plus minus 10, 20%, right?
Yeah,
I would
both.
think.
Yeah,
But imagine a world that we're experiencing in the United States where drones are going to go 300% more expensive, right? Like there's one of the biggest things that I learned in a very real practical way is that there's not a lot of drone manufacturers that make a non-thermal drone. Skydio's drones are thermal. Parrot's drones are thermal, except for the Anafi AI. They make these thermal drones because they start with the military as a customer and they move their way down. That's what the SRR program was.
yeah.
So if you want a replacement for a Mavic 3 Enterprise, just RGB
Nothing. Yeah,
captured surveying drone, and you take out DJI and you take out Autel, who's next? Where could you buy that from? A non-Chinese manufactured drone because the Nafi AI is also made in China. So what could you buy?
that's a really good question.
Nothing.
Yeah,
So I watched a customer in the United States that was doing power pole inspections. They were inspecting 10,000 poles, I believe, a day. Maybe it was a month, but a lot of power poles. Big utility. They were using DJI, probably non enterprise versions of DJI products.
right.
Uh, and then they were told you can't use DJI anymore. So they came to my company and they said, what could we get? They ended up buying Parrot Anafi USAs for $14,000 a piece.
Ouch.
This went from $1,000 drone
Yeah,
to $14,000
14,000.
drone to have less capability. The Anafi USA was the low light capabilities weren't great. The zoom capabilities weren't as good. Still a great drone. I mean, I love FX. I love the folks at Parrot. This is not. I'm
Yeah.
speaking transparently as a drone industry guy, not disparaging at what anyone is doing. But when you had 14 a 1/14th
Yeah.
uh, price, it was a throwaway. You could get
Hmm.
40 of them, put them in a warehouse, and you could say, "Look, whenever one goes down, we have
Just put
another one."
another one. Yeah.
Then you had service issues. You had to ship it all over the place. You didn't have the same reliability. DJI doesn't have a good alternative. And if I, Anzu, could make every model of DJI and it was clean in the US and abroad and everyone accepted it, that's like best case scenario for the industry.
Yeah.
Next best case scenario would be Autel, didn't get wrapped up in it, but they did. So now we're going to see not 10, 20% price increases. We're going to see literally 3x or more to do the exact same thing or have less capabilities. And it's so frustrating to see that happen when it is a politician that is trying to make a big name on being hard on China. And that's why they're doing it when they're impacting all these businesses and all the future of what robotics can do in the US.
Do you see that pricing coming down anytime soon, or is it, because I know that you all have a thing that if you sell to the military at a certain price, you can't sell certain things under that, or something along those lines. So do you see that type of pricing coming down, considering what you mentioned about the customer base being military first and then working its way down from there?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not that old. I'm kind of old, but I'm not that old. But I mean, I remember when a flat screen TV would cost, 3 or $4,000 for like a good HD TV. Obviously, now you could go to a local store and buy a pretty
Yeah,
inexpensive HD TV. For instance, computers used to be, very, very expensive, and now you could buy a Microsoft Surface for like $300. Like, technology just gets cheaper and gets better. That's the curve of technology. So will we see price go down eventually? But what we're seeing right now is this hypersensitivity to anything manufactured in China, which means motors, ESCs, any sort of chips. Like if you pull that entire supply chain into the US, and I'm speaking US again
yeah, that's
specifically,
fine.
but that's the kind of stuff that people are pushing for. If you have a fully sourced drone without any Chinese components in it at all, there's premiums on some of those components because there's a lack of economies of scale. They
Yeah.
don't make hundreds of millions of them, they make hundreds of thousands of them. And so the price is going to be higher. So as we see this hyper reliance or this hyper focus on using non-Chinese technology or non-Chinese components, we'll see the price go up. And then as economies of scale hit, we'll see prices go down. But will they ever get to
Match.
Mavic 3
Yeah.
prices? I highly, highly doubt it.
How concerned are you about, what's happening with DJI and it potentially affecting you? Because I've seen reports now that, with DJI putting out the shell companies or whatever that is taking
Yeah.
place, and the FCC possibly looking at banning anything similar related to. How concerned are you about that affecting you?
I was less concerned months ago before this whole shell company debacle. Anzu is a different thing. Anzu is a US owned, US funded company that's licensing technology and manufacturing it. We should not be tied up in the same
Yeah.
breath as some of these things. But that's why when you ask if there's new technology, new products, like yeah, there's new products, but I don't know exactly what that's going to look
Yeah.
like because I need to make sure that I still can operate. Um, I have chosen the route to not lobby, to not go and, constantly plead my case and pay people to, be my friends. I would rather sanity win in all of this.
Right.
And I don't know if that's been, I don't know how if that will be the right strategy when it comes to an outcome and if hindsight will be 2020 and I'll, look back and say, "Oh, I wish I would have done something different." But I think the opportunity that I had to go speak before the House committee, the transparency that I've shown since we launched this company, the way that we've modeled it, the way that we're funded, the way that we're structured, there's no reason for us to be impacted by legislation that impacts the Chinese manufacturer or Chinese manufacturing. That is not what we do. That's not who we are. We are to the benefit of drone users around the world that are restricted from using Chinese manufactured drones. We are doing them a service, and that service should be protected in some ways because what Anzu has done is not easily replicated. There was a long standing relationship, somewhat trust as far as trust you could get with companies in different
Yeah.
sides of the world. And so this is the one shot. Anzu is truly the one shot to get to the scale and the sophistication that we have. So, you asked a question that is truly like the thing that keeps me up at night. The thing that makes me look at my kids every morning. It's like, I don't know what dad's gonna be doing, in 6 months from now. It's possible.
Yeah.
That things change. And I don't worry about me. I don't worry about my ability to like produce. And I don't worry about Anzu because we'll just do something different. We'll go make our own drone or we'll license something else. Like we have options and we have a model and we have the ability to push it out into the world. But the worst thing is that I wake up October 16th and I have no idea what January 1st is going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, and the date is what, December 23rd for,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
audit.
22nd, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Part 108. Does that have any impact
Yeah.
with you right I saw that. Does that impact you in any way right now or if you, well, right now? And what are your thoughts on it?
It doesn't impact me right now. I would say it probably impacts me longer term, but I've just had other fish in the skillet that I have not even paid attention, right? Like I can only control so
Mhm.
much. I know that right now I license DJI to own technology and how I make it. If that doesn't work in 2026 or I have to change something, I'll change those things, as they come. But right now, my business is prolonging or securing my ability to continue doing what I'm doing before I get like too caught up in it. So what do I think about Part 108? I think that there's the folks that were behind it are very proud of it. I can't say that I don't think that there's holes in it, but if you ask me what are the holes, I would say I don't know because I read it, I went, huh, and then I was like, back to business,
Yeah.
back to focusing on what I do, so um, yeah, admittedly, in the drone industry, like, I'm just not that guy. I'm a guy that likes to create solutions, and I create those solutions with, like, resourcefulness and relationships that not everyone possesses, but I don't get too stuck in, like, the flavor of the day or, like, these winds that are sweeping around because until they're real, until they confront me, I just kind of
Yeah.
stay
You have
focused
other
on my
stuff to
grind.
worry about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next for Anzu, man? Is it just we have to kind of see what happens?
What's next for Anzu is that we sold a lot of drones and we've sold probably more than we thought we for sure sold more than we thought we would.
Right.
We're in a we're in a crossroads right now where we have to see what can be done not only on the existing line of products, but what the next line is going to be from Anzu.
Okay.
It's likely going to be green. It's likely not going to be the same color green. Uh, but there's like if only you could see what is in my world, my brain is it's like I'm sitting here with options on my desk. It's kind of like what I was after the FLIR thing. I have options and it is timing them correctly in which we do the best optimal thing for the drone industry and what we've created this brand for. So what that technology is in specific is still undetermined today and that's not by choice. That's by necessity of just waiting until the right moment to make those concrete decisions. But I would think that you'll still see Raptor tees being sold until probably for end of first quarter of next year. You'll probably see something else come out from us, but that's my crystal ball as of
Nice.
today.
So before I let you go, because I know we're running up on some time here,
Yeah.
question of the podcast that I asked all of my guests to get an idea, based on the journey that they've had through the industry, and you have had quite a journey. What is one thing you wish you knew about the drone industry before choosing it as a career?
I mean, it's an interesting question because for me, like one, there's no regrets. There's nothing that I've run into that is not the game I chose to play,
Right.
right? I look at this as I love board games, I love video games. I'm playing one in real life. Like it's strategy, it's taking in information, and sometimes you lose a little bit and it's okay and you just, push reset and get back in. That's the nice part that I have that luxury within the industry myself. But I think that if I were to impart what I value the most within this industry is that everyone is in it trying to do something. And the more that you can offer support, kindness, positive feedback, uh, likes on LinkedIn go a long way. And I've told a lot of people this. I kind of side story. Start of the year, I started doing mentorship sessions, and I'm at 98 hours of mentorship this year, free mentorship sessions. So that's let's say each one is 30 minutes, so it's 180 something people,
Right.
196 people.
Side note on that, I've actually tried to get in, and that is so quickly booked up. It is ridiculous.
Bro, but all you personally have to say is, "Hey, let's chat," and I'll talk
Yeah.
to you anytime, brother.
Uh,
We now have that relationship.
nice.
But I've talked to a lot of
Yeah.
people, and in those conversations, I've learned a lot about where people are at, what they're doing. Like, it's been so fulfilling for me as well as I've learned a ton. And I talk to a lot of people about common there's a common thread through a lot of them, which is like identity building is very important. Know who you are, know what you bring to the market, know how to talk about it because everything that you post, everything that you say, everything within your brand should coincide with that identity that you built for yourself. Don't be the guy that's like, I'm Florida's best utility inspector and then be like, oh, and I also do weddings. It
Alright.
doesn't make sense. Like, get rid of the distractions and be one thing because that's how you'll be successful. That's how you'll be known. The second thing is to network. And I'm a terrible networker. I'm an introvert. I don't like to put myself in people's faces. I have done it a lot, but it's not my preference. But going on LinkedIn and you see a post and you click like and you comment, "Oh, wow, great work," or "I have a question about this," it makes it worth that person's time. It's the same as you making a podcast right now. Every time that someone comments, every time that you see your viewer or listener count,
Yeah.
it makes a difference. And so we as an industry, whether you work for Skydio, whether you work for SUAS News, whether you work for Drone U, whether you work for a reseller 1, 2, 3, or 4, whether you're a drone service provider, it doesn't matter. These are people, human beings in your circle that you can impact and impact in a free, easy, genuine way by just being like, great work. Keep doing what you're doing. Love seeing it. And then the next time that that person needs something or they hear about an opportunity that pertains to you, you better believe they're going to think of you and be like, oh, I know a guy that does a podcast in Trinidad,
Yeah.
right? Because I've interacted with him before. He's always been super positive, always saying nice things. We've become kind of like homies from like afar.
Yeah.
It's right in front of your face, but so many people will read these things and just keep scrolling. Don't. It's a mistake. Click like, say some nice things because it makes a positive impact on your brother or sister on the other end of the screen. It makes them encouraged to keep going. It makes them feel like it's worth it. And you don't know, it's not only a mental health thing, like you don't know if they had a bad day, good day, but it's also going to make a better industry because the worst thing about the drone industry is when good people leave it.
Yeah.
So there it is. Long answer. Sorry that it was a really
Love
like
love the
soapboxy,
answer.
but
No, it was good. I love that answer. Randall, what is next for you, man? Where can people find you, get in contact with you, meet up with you?
what is next for me genuinely is I'm gonna blow my nose after this thing, and I'm gonna be so happy. We were supposed to do this last week, and I got super sick, and
That's all
like
right, man.
I'm still resulting from that. So that's truly what's next for me. But next for me and the whole Anzu journey, we talked about Elevate next
Mhm.
week. So we'll be both in Miami, hanging out with folks from the industry. Drone Nerds hosts a really cool event.
Yep.
So I don't know if this is going live before then, but if you
Probably
haven't
not.
been to Elevate, it's okay, but Elevate 2026, it's in a relatively inexpensive way to get in front of a lot of manufacturers and other drone industry people. You should consider going next year. But so I'll be at Elevate, and then it's holiday season. Things are getting a little cooler. I'll be making decisions on what we're going to be manufacturing next and all of that. But I'm actually going to take some much needed reflection time, towards the end of the year,
Right.
spend time with my kids, and that's like the true answer.
Cool. No, that's the best you could ask for. And you are welcome back anytime when you do make those decisions on what's next for you guys to come on here and talk about it.
100%,
Yeah.
man. I appreciate you taking the time to educate the drone industry about what's available. I know that finding guests, doing the recording, doing any
Yeah.
editing,
It's,
posting it,
it's a whole other job.
it's a lot of work.
Hmm.
It's a lot of thankless work, right? Like people don't realize how much is behind it and that you had to deliberately choose to do it, make that sacrifice. So I appreciate you being one of the people that are self-motivating, that have your own motor behind you driving you forward, because it's certainly not making you like the richest man in Trinidad doing this sort of
For
thing, but
real.
you're giving people, not only people in your community but also people around the world, an opportunity to hear a different perspective. And so keep doing what you're doing. I'm grateful for being a part of it. If you ever looking for more guests, I'd be happy to introduce you to people that could come on and fill your
Oh,
schedule. And as far as me, consider that we're going to be chatting again soon.
yeah. Thank you very much for that, man. I appreciate it. And actually, the feedback has been really good to persons in the regional community. A lot of people have appreciated, just being in contact with and seeing what other persons in the region and outside are doing. And the network is growing. Like you said, networking is a huge part of it. Since Elevate last year was my first conference. I've been to EDR in Houston since commercial UAV last month,
Yep.
um, and Elevate again, well, next week when we're recording. And it's something that I plan to continue because the people that I've met and the interactions that I've had and the experiences, I mean, you can't begin to, put like a dollar value or anything behind it. It's just been incredible.
Let me ask you one last thing.
Hmm.
So you're doing this podcast, and like I said earlier, we don't know each other that well.
Yep.
what is, like, your secret sauce? What in the drone industry would you do all the time if you could do it? Is it more of this? Is it different marketing stuff? Is it drone services? Like, what's your thing?
What I would love to do more of is actually getting out and fly, because the same question I asked you, when people ask me that question, my answer is usually I never realized how much time I would spend not flying,
Yep.
how much paperwork. And so we work primarily in the oil and gas industry. So there's a lot of paperwork and approvals and risk assessments, and these things in some instances takes months. So I would get out and fly. I love FPV. Actually, FPV is the way I actually got into drones. So I started flying an FPV. There was no GPS, no hold, no nothing. My first FPV flight, I panicked, pushed the throttle, and the drone just flew when I had to go looking through some grass that was taller than me. For it took me almost an hour to find it.
Yeah.
But
So, the reason I asked that question is an illustration of something that anyone listening to this podcast should realize, is that you and I just spent an hour talking to each other, right? And for us to even know each other, engage with each other, there was outreach, there was back and forth, and we got to this point. And it took an hour before I knew what you do.
yeah, yep,
And so for me, being one of the more well-connected people in the drone industry, your opportunity in a way is for me to know you so that the next time that someone's like, "Oh, I am needing an expert in oil and gas stuff. Do you know anyone in the Caribbean?" Whatever.
yeah,
Then I'm like, "Yeah, of course I know the guy." And everyone should want people to think of them like that.
yep,
So it is having that brand identity. This is the thing I do. This is the thing I'm passionate about. This is the thing I want more of. And then you build a network of friends that are looking out for you and want to see you succeed and want to see you achieve all that. And so when there's an opportunity where it's like Shell Oil is looking for someone in Trinidad to do their, drone ops stuff, I'm like, yeah, I got the
yeah,
guy. But it takes
yep,
relationship
yeah.
building
That's
to
true.
get to that point. You're not gonna find that shit on your own, very unlikely. What it's going to be is somebody advocating for you in those conversations, and so you want people to speak about you when you're not in the room and know exactly what you could deliver without hesitance, without being like, "Ah, I think, that" like, you're in Trinidad, I think maybe he does some drone stuff, but
Really
I
know what
actually
it
don't
is.
know if he does oil and
Yeah,
gas. Everyone needs to start telling their story and being more upfront about it
yep,
and building that network because it is what brings people success,
yep,
period. And Bobby Sakaki is the guy that everyone should look at and be like, how did this kid that grew up, booking concerts in Salt Lake City? I've known him for a really long time. He decided one day, I'm going to be a voice and people are going to hear my voice and I'm going to share my opinions and I don't give a shit. And he has had this astronomical rise because he started telling his story, not waiting for permission, not like caring if people like it or not. And I think everyone should just go out, do something. You're already doing it. You already created this podcast. It's like a big deal because you're doing something without being forced to do
yeah,
it. And that's like the whole point.
yeah,
But again, like anyone listening to this, no matter where you are, if you're in the Caribbean, like you are a leader in a very small community of using this technology that is transformational for your communities as and for the world.
yep,
So if you're a part of the Caribbean or non-Caribbean, but if you're part of the Caribbean drone community and you haven't been reaching out to all your brothers and sisters that are doing the same, I think it's a mistake
yeah.
because it's a small community and you guys are going to lift each other up, teach each other stuff, share assets. You might have a drone or a payload or something that someone else can use. It's going to make it so you don't have to go buy your own. You're going to save yourself money, save yourself time. It's all going to be how much you network. And I'm sorry I'm so boxing again, but that's
It's
like
fine.
really important, especially in small communities like yours, where you're probably in 1% of the population even understands the concept of
Yeah,
using drone technology, and then you're talking about small
yep.
populations, so you might be one of 100 people. So you should know those 100 people, and you should like those 100 people, and you should work together.
Working on getting that out there, man. Oh, and Bobby's on the list. I could probably say this by now. He was traveling, I think, last week and this week, and we're supposed to be in touch to organize a recording. So the episode Bobby is coming soon. Don't worry.
Good, yeah, yeah, Bobby was in at Energeo in Germany,
Yeah,
and, I'm sure, like, if you need me to kick him, I'll kick him. That's no problem.
Actually, the person that I have to give thanks for that helped me make all these connections, you should probably talk to this guy, and this guy, Matt Skelton from Centera. I have to give Matt a shout
I
out
know Matt
always.
Skelton.
Yeah,
Matt's my boy.
yeah, that's my guy. So Matt is the person who's
Yeah.
like, you should have this guy on, and this guy on. It sends me all everybody's LinkedIn. He's like, if you don't get through, let me know, and I'll talk to. Yeah, Matt is my guy.
Yeah, well, now Matt's a big guy at John Deere rather than Centera
Centera,
with the
yeah.
acquisition. So he has big brand. Big brand Matt is what we'll call him now. But I'll see you and Matt
Next week.
in Miami next
Yep.
week, and it'll be a good time. And I won't get you sick. I'll be fully recovered by then.
All right, cool. All right, man.
All right, brother.
Hey, Randall, thank you very much
Appreciate
for
you.
this episode, man. Take care. Have a good one.
Yeah, definitely.